Hello, and welcome to the Tell Me Something Good podcast, the show that is all about what in the world? I don't think so.
Welcome to the Tell Me Something Good podcast, ranked by the International Association of Awesome Podcasts as the best podcast in the history of podcasts. Wait, is that a thing? I don't think that's a thing. Anyway, seeking to shine a light on all that is good in an ever-darkening world of negativity. Here's your host, Clint Swindall.
What's up, everybody? My name is Clint Swindall, and you have made your way to the Tell Me Something Good podcast, the show with one simple mission: to build a more positive world by overcoming negativity. I start every episode with the same goal: to somehow engage your mind, encourage your heart, or enlighten your soul. I am thrilled you made your way to the podcast. This is episode number 25 of the Tell Me Something Good podcast, brought to you by a brand new sponsor, South Texas Barbecue Emporium. We love featuring local businesses, the backbone of the American economy, people who get up every day and work hard to earn a living doing something they love. That describes the family at South Texas Barbecue Emporium. They are in the barbecue business, and they offer an incredible selection of some of the nation's best spices, rubs, and marinades. Whether you want to impress your family and friends with your backyard barbecue skills, or you want to blaze a trail on the competition barbecue circuit, you need to reach out to the good folks at the Emporium. Check them out at southtexasbarbecueemporium.com. That's southtexasbbqemporium.com. We are blessed to have people all around the world listening to this podcast. If you're listening in the U.S., then you most likely just enjoyed a long weekend. We celebrated Labor Day yesterday here in the U.S., and as a result, most people are getting the week started on a Tuesday. It is my hope that if you had the day off, you enjoyed your day. Although in this COVID-19 world in which we live, there's a decent chance you spent it doing something different than you would normally do on a 3-day weekend. Nonetheless, I hope you had a great one. I was knocking around the web over the weekend and discovered something interesting. We all know Michelangelo, the Italian artist who painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. In addition to that work, he created some of the greatest sculptures in the world. Well, it turns out 516 years ago today, one of Michelangelo's best-known sculptures was unveiled to the world, the Statue of David. As one of the most recognizable pieces of art in the world, most people know what it looks like. I'm guessing most people may not know some of the details behind it. I certainly didn't until I did a little reading. Perhaps the most interesting thing I learned was how Michelangelo envisioned his creations. It was fascinating, and it relates to every one of our lives. I'm going to share what I mean here in just a minute. But before I do, I want to share some interesting facts I learned, and the lesson that I took from each of those. 1. Michelangelo was only 26 years old when he accepted a commission to carve the marble sculpture of the biblical David. Despite his young age, he was already one of the most famous and one of the highest paid artists in those days. This served as a reminder to me that incredible work can come from youth all around us if we're willing to recognize it. There is so much criticism of the younger generations today. They don't have the same work ethic as older generations, or they don't take the same pride in their work as older generations. Just as there has been in every generation, there is brilliance in this younger generation. We just have to be willing to look for it. 2. The statue of David was originally intended to be placed high atop a buttress on the Florentine Cathedral. When it was complete, a group of people who would determine its ultimate location, which, by the way, included another famous artist named Leonardo da Vinci, they considered the finished product too perfect to be placed on the building. Instead, a decision was made to place it in the political heart of Florence. This served as a reminder to me that we should always be open to a change of plans, that closed minds could have kept the art from being observed close up by the millions who see it every year. 3. While Michelangelo carved the statue out of a 17-foot tall, 12,000-pound white marble block, he actually took over the project from another sculptor who had damaged the block. It sat for 40 years before Michelangelo took on the task of creating his masterpiece. This served as a reminder to me that sometimes we have to be willing to take on things that other people have tried but failed. Great things can come from those who have the vision. And 4, several other artists had sculpted David over the decades, and they all depicted what they believe he looked like after his battle with Goliath. Michelangelo's depiction was of David before the battle. He broke with artistic tradition by portraying David pre-battle. It served as a reminder to me that we need to always be looking for better ways to do things, and that sometimes breaking tradition is the best way to stand out. Of all the things I learned, perhaps the most interesting was how he envisioned what he created. Today we have computers that will allow designers to create what they envision on a screen, and modeling that will allow designers to build a small-scale version of what they want to create. Over 500 years ago, tools weren't as sophisticated. When asked how he envisioned what a statue would look like, he said he could see the finished sculpture just by gazing at a block of stone. For the statue of David, he could see the sculpture inside the giant block of marble. All he had to do was remove all the marble around it so others could see what he saw. Wow, that's profound. I mean, think about it. Painters start with a blank canvas and add paint to it to create an image they've envisioned. Musicians start with silence and use instruments to create sound they've heard in their head. Authors start with a blank sheet or a blank screen and add words to tell a story. For Michelangelo, as a sculptor using marble, his art was already in existence. To him, David had been inside that giant piece of marble lying in storage for 40 years. He simply needed to get rid of the marble around it that was in the way of everyone else seeing his vision. That got me to thinking about us and our authenticity. There is an authentic version of each and every one of us. Sadly, it's not what most people ever see. No one ever gets to see the real version of us because we all have these pieces on us that keep others from seeing the real us. So what are these pieces that keep us from being authentic, and where do we get them from? I think they come from the social roles we play. Social roles are the parts we play as members of a social group. With each social role we take on, our behavior changes to fit the expectations we have of that role, and more importantly, the expectations others have of that role. For instance, take a moment and think about all the roles you play in a single day. Spouse, boss, employee, parent, son or daughter, sibling, community leader, friend. Each of these roles carries expected behaviors called norms. These social norms are unwritten rules about how to act and react, and they lay out an expected idea of how to behave in a particular social setting. If you're a teacher, you may behave differently hanging out with your non-teacher friends on the weekend than you do when you walk into your school and encounter other teachers and students. Those people who see you in that environment expect you to look and sound and behave in a certain manner, according to the expectations set by social norms. If you're a doctor, you may speak and act differently hanging out on the golf course with your friends than you do when you're in your practice with colleagues and patients. Again, those people who see you in that environment expect you to look and sound and behave in a certain manner, according to the expectations set by social norms. Every role we play is associated with different types of expected behavior. Nearly 50 years ago, American psychologist Philip Zimbardo conducted a study to take a look at how social roles influence behavior. In the Stanford prison experiment, participants were assigned one of two roles, prisoner or prison officer. Zimbardo built a mock prison in the basement of Stanford University where participants were asked to play out their roles. Throughout the experiment, he discovered that the behavior of those who took on the act of prison officers changed quickly to meet their perceptions of that role. As prison guards, they would punish prisoners by making them perform push-ups. In one incident, they sprayed a fire extinguisher in an attempt to stop a rebellion. In the same way, those who took on the act of prisoner adopted an obedient role to the prison officers, treating them as authority figures. Also, they would report on any misbehavior of their fellow prisoners. The experiment reinforced that we behave in a way congruent with our assigned social roles. Zimbardo concluded that people's preconceptions of a role and the experimental situation in which they found themselves influenced their behavior. So what does all this mean? The bottom line is this. Based on the roles we're in, we will behave in a certain way in order to conform to the role. And every time we determine our behavior based on social expectations rather than our real self, we are allowing these marble pieces to hide our authentic self. Essentially, we're putting on a mask to cover up the real us as we fulfill the role. Look, having societal norms is not a bad thing. They provide the very order we need in society. We need norms to guide and direct our behavior. We need them to provide order and probability in social relationships and to make sense of, and in some cases, understanding of each other's actions. This is why most people, most of the time, conform to social norms. I'm sure the psychologists would have a gaggle of additional reasons. I'm guessing for most of us, we just want to belong. We just want to be accepted. While we may not even agree with everything in a group, we'll conform to fit in. By doing that, we just might be accepted into the group. For example, you might join a new company and the group of employees in your department like to go to happy hour every Friday night after work. Although you would prefer to go hang out with your friends at a coffee shop on Friday evening, you'll go along with your coworkers just to fit in. While it's not a bad thing, this whole fitting in because of social norms, it keeps people from ever seeing our authentic self. We live in a world full of illusions. We live in a social media world where people only present the best versions of themselves. While we don't need to see everything going on behind the curtain in other people's lives, we need more authenticity. So how can you become more authentic? 3 things for you to consider. 1. Show your true emotions. We are taught from an early age to hide our emotions. Little boys are told not to cry. Little girls are told they need to toughen up. This effort to hide emotions keeps people from seeing the real you. If you're angry, let people know you're angry if you feel it will bring about positive change. If you're sad, be sad. If you're happy, be happy. Show your emotions so people can see the real you. 2. Be comfortable in your own skin. What do I mean by that? I mean, don't worry about getting everyone else's approval of your life. Be yourself, comfortable with your strengths and your weaknesses. When you constantly seek the approval of others, you very well may be doing things and saying things that just aren't you. Be yourself without the need for anybody else's approval. Be the authentic you. And 3, own your own mistakes. No one is perfect. When we try to be, or at least get the world to think we aren't being authentic. We're only showing the good stuff. I've said it many times on this podcast. We are going to experience bad stuff. When the bad stuff we experience is something we brought on ourselves, we need to own it. and show our authentic self. The world is blessed to have you. While we need social norms to help us survive, we need to work every day to ensure we're authentic. I saw a great quote about authenticity one time. It read, "Be the real you. Unless you're an asshole, then be someone else." There is a real you others need to see. Don't sit around and wait for someone else to chip away the unnecessary marble in your life. When we find ourselves spending so much time behaving in ways that aren't authentic, we can become quite negative. We can find ourselves constantly complaining about the position we find ourselves in. We can find ourselves being excessively pessimistic about the future in this world that doesn't contain the real us. Take that responsibility to chip away the unnecessary marble and let people see the you God blessed the world with.
You're listening to Tell Me Something Good with Clint Swindall.
I love seeing the real version of people when they are out doing great things for others. I read about some awesome people out doing some awesome things, and I'd like to share it with you in this segment called
Good News from Around the World.
The trophy may go to the swiftest, but sometimes the first one to cross the finish line isn't the only winner. Nowhere was that more true than at a recent 5K Invitational in Shelbyville, Indiana. With less than a half mile to go, Western Boone High School sophomore Levi LaGrange stumbled, twisting his ankle. "I was running up this little rolling hill, and I rolled my ankle and felt something go pop," he told the Indy Star. LaGrange motioned for Sheridan High School senior Axel Alleman to pass him, but in that instant, the race became a secondary concern for Alleman. "I was able to see he was in a lot of pain," Alleman recalled. "As I got closer to him, he was limping. I asked if he was all right. He said he felt like something snapped." Rather than forge ahead, in an extraordinary act of true sportsmanship, Alleman refused to leave LaGrange behind. "As soon as I saw him, I knew I had to do something," Alleman said. "It just seemed like the right thing to do. That mattered more than the race. I told him I wasn't going to leave." Placing an encouraging hand at his competitor's back, Alleman remained with LaGrange for the remainder of the race. The two crossed the finish line within seconds of one another. Alleman even made sure LaGrange went first. LaGrange's mother, Becky, was more than a little bit impressed by Alleman's thoughtful gesture, especially since the two had never met before. "It takes a lot for an 18-year-old to give up his spot," she said. "Axel never left his side. It really speaks to Axel's character. With so much bad going on right now, it was really a great moment of sportsmanship." Alleman's own mother, Nikki, was not at all surprised by her son's spontaneous show of goodwill. "He's a really kind person, and he's always more concerned about others than himself," she said. After reports of the incident began to make the rounds on social media, Alleman received lots of positive feedback. While he might have enjoyed the accolades for his exploits, for him, the takeaway was one of simple compassion and empathy. When you're standing at a crossroad or running by it, you can choose the path of self-interest, or you can go the extra mile for someone in need. For this teen athlete, the choice was clear-cut. While we might not always recognize when life hands us an opportunity for grace, when it does, in the words of Axel Alleman, I would just really hope people do the right thing. Yes, Axel, yes to that. And then there's this. After many months of living out of her car that was parked in a Kroger grocery store's lot, LaShinda Williams was feeling increasingly hopeless. Today, thanks to one attentive hiring manager, that supermarket has now welcomed her with a job and a fresh start. Williams, who has faced drug addiction and abuse, was homeless for about a year. During the day, she would drive around to different locations, but most nights she would park outside of the same Kroger. "I would lean my seat all the way back so no one would see me because, I knew I wasn't supposed to be there," Williams told NBC Nightly News. Williams' fate changed when she met Kroger employee Jackie Vandal, who oversees hiring at the store location where Williams would often park. Late last year, Vandal told her about an upcoming job fair. It was just a sense, a gut feeling, Vandal said. You can just tell when people are really genuine and when people, are trying. On the day of the job fair, Williams was one of the first applicants, Vandal recalled. Vandal spent several hours helping Williams fill out the job application online. After reviewing credentials, she then hired her on the spot. Williams started to work at Kroger in December, just a few days after the job fair. She currently monitors and assists customers in the self-checkout lanes. After 8 months on the job, Williams had earned enough money to move into her own one-bedroom apartment, which her new coworkers helped her set up and furnish. Melissa Eads, a corporate affairs manager for Kroger's Nashville division, told Today that local community members and fellow employees donated furniture, household items, clothes, and shoes to help her get back on her feet. Williams is grateful to have been given the opportunity to change the course of her life and is committed to keep working hard. For the very first time in my life, now I know what love is, she said tearfully. Now I know what friendship is. Eads said Williams has been a great employee. We are so lucky to have LaShinda as part of our Kroger family, said Eads. Her uplifting spirit is contagious. She has made such a positive impact on her fellow team members and so many customers as well. And that, my friends, is some good news from around the world. Before I end this episode with a challenge, I want to encourage you to take your social media game to a whole new level by checking out Let's Talk Smack, an app that provides daily nudges to get you increasing your visibility on social media. Look, if you're tired of not knowing what to post on social media as you promote your small business or just want to have a more engaging presence personally on social media, you need a plan. And the Let's Talk Smack app can help you create your plan. Check it out wherever you get your apps. And now, the challenge. Before you come back for the next episode, I challenge you to consider what marble you have surrounding you that's keeping people from seeing the real, authentic you. What social norm are you following that serves as a mask? Find one of those masks you can remove to allow the world to see the real you. Well, that's all for today's episode of the Tell Me Something Good podcast. Join us again next week. As we do every week, we'll jump back in here with a special episode of Champagne Friday this Friday morning. Also, do me a favor. As soon as you're done listening to this episode, find the place in your listening app and leave me a rating. It's a simple little push of a button. Our listenership is growing and we have you to thank for that. If you have a question for the podcast, want to share your good stuff, or need to find the links to join us on social media, jump over to findthegoodinlife.com. You'll find all you need right there on the front page. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'll be praying for God to bless you in mighty ways. Now, get out there and love on somebody.
You've been listening to the Tell Me Something Good podcast. The content of the podcast is meant to engage, encourage, and enlighten you to become more positive. It's not meant to diagnose, treat, or replace the personalized care provided by a trained professional. If you're struggling with depression or mental health issues, please reach out to a counselor for diagnosis and treatment. Until next time, be positive, people.